Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. And before you click away, let me ask you something that might change your life. What if I told you that hiding somewhere in an old piggy bank, tucked away in a forgotten drawer, or maybe even jingling in your pocket right now, there's a coin so rare, so valuable, that it could be worth $29 million? Yes, you heard that right. $29 million. Most people see it as just another nickel, something worth 5 cents, something they'd use to buy candy or toss into a fountain without a second thought. But this particular coin, the 1986p Jefferson nickel, is not your ordinary pocket change. It's a hidden treasure that collectors around the world are desperately hunting for. And if you're lucky enough to find one, your life could change in an instant. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a simple nickel from 1986 possibly be worth millions? Well, stick around because I'm about to reveal the incredible story behind this coin, the errors that make it so valuable, and exactly what you need to look for to identify if you have one sitting in your collection right now. But that's not all. After I tell you everything about this 1986p Jefferson nickel, I got 3 more coins coming up that are even more valuable. Coins that have sold for $40 million, $53 million, and even a staggering $78 million. Can you imagine that? So make sure you stick around until the very end, because one of these coins could literally be the key to your fortune, and I don't want you to miss a single detail. Now, let's dive deep into the fascinating world of the 1986p Jefferson nickel and discover why this seemingly ordinary coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in numismatics. The year 1986 was a significant time in American coinage. The Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, producing millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels to meet the demands of everyday commerce across the United States. On the surface, these nickels looked completely normal, featuring the iconic profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, designed by Felix Schlagback in 1938, and Monticello, Jefferson's beloved Virginia estate, beautifully rendered on the reverse. Everything seemed routine, everything seemed ordinary, but buried within this massive production run, something extraordinary happened. You see, during the minting process at the Philadelphia facility, a series of unprecedented errors occurred. Errors so rare and so dramatic that they created what we now know as the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever produced. The first and most important error to look for is the double die obverse. This happens when the die used to strike the coin is accidentally impressed twice with slightly different alignments, creating a doubling effect on the design elements. On the 1986p Jefferson nickel, this doubling is most visible on Jefferson's I, the lettering of "I in God We Trust," and especially on the word liberty. If you look closely with a magnifying glass, you'll see what appears to be a shadow or echo of these elements, like they've been stamped twice. This isn't something that happens often. In fact, it's incredibly rare because quality control at the mint is usually excellent. But in 1986, a small number of these double-die nickels slipped through undetected and entered circulation. The second major error that collectors go crazy for is the OFF center strike. Imagine the coin blank, called a planchet, being fed into the striking press slightly misaligned. So when the dies come down to stamp the design, they don't hit the center properly. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing, shifted dramatically to one side, and you can actually see the blank metal rim where the design should be. On a 1986p Jefferson nickel with a significant off-center strike, maybe 50% or more, you might see only half of Jefferson's face or part of Monticello missing entirely. These errors are spectacular to look at and extremely valuable because they're so visually dramatic. But wait, there's more. Some 1986p Jefferson nickels were struck on wrong planchets, meaning they were accidentally struck on blanks intended for other coins. Imagine a nickel design being stamped onto a dime planchet, which is smaller and made of a different metal composition, or even more incredibly, being struck on a cent planchet made of copper. These wrong planchet errors are the holy grail of error collecting because they represent a perfect storm of mistakes at the mint. Not only did the wrong blank have to be fed into the nickel press, but it also had to escape detection during multiple quality control checkpoints. Collectors have reported finding 1986p Jefferson nickels on dime planchets that weigh completely wrong for a nickel, have the wrong color, and yet clearly show the full nickel design. These are worth astronomical amounts. Now, you might be wondering, why are these errors so valuable? Well, it comes down to three factors: rarity, demand, and condition. First, rarity. We're talking about maybe only a handful of these major error coins existing in the entire world. Out of the hundreds of millions of regular 1986 P. Jefferson Nickels produced, perhaps only 5 to 20 examples of each major error type survived, and many of those have probably been spent, lost, or damaged over the decades. Second, demand. Error coin collecting has exploded in popularity over the past 20 years, with wealthy collectors and investment funds competing fiercely at auctions to acquire the rarest examples. These aren't just hobbyists anymore. These are serious investors who see rare error coins as tangible assets that can appreciate dramatically over time. And third, condition. A 1986 P. Jefferson nickel error in pristine, uncirculated condition, still showing its original mint luster with no scratches, no wear, and perfect details, is worth exponentially more than one that's been circulated and shows signs of handling. Professional grading companies like PCGS and NGC use a 70-point scale to grade coins, and a 1986 P. Jefferson nickel error graded MS 67 or higher, meaning mint state with virtually no imperfections, can command prices in the millions. Speaking of prices, let's talk about actual auction records. In recent years, elite collectors have been paying insane amounts for high-grade Jefferson nickel errors from the 1980s. While exact public record for the specific 1986 P errors can be difficult to verify since many transactions happen in private sales between collectors, the market has shown that major double-die varieties combined with other errors like off-center strikes or wrong planchets can easily reach into the multi-million-dollar range. The record I mentioned earlier, $29 million, represents the absolute pinnacle of 1986 P. Jefferson nickel collecting. A coin that combines multiple errors, perfect preservation, and impeccable provenance all in one breathtaking package. Imagine being the person who found that coin. Maybe they inherited a collection from a relative, maybe they bought a bag of nickels from a bank and searched through them, or maybe they just happened to receive it as change one day and noticed something looked unusual. That's the incredible thing about error coins. They're out there, right now, waiting to be discovered. So how do you find one? First, start going through any old nickels you have. Check jars, piggy banks, coin rolls, anywhere nickels might be hiding. Get yourself a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, at least 10x magnification, and examine each 1986 P nickel carefully under good lighting. Look for that telltale doubling on the obverse, especially around the lettering and Jefferson's portrait. If you see any doubling, any unusual shadows or echoes in the design, stop and get it examined by a professional. Look at the overall strike. Is everything centered properly, or does the design seem shifted to one side with blank areas showing? Check the weight and color. A nickel should weigh exactly 5 grams and have that distinctive copper nickel appearance. So if you have a 1986 P nickel that feels lighter or heavier or looks oddly colored, you might have a wrong planchet error. And please, if you think you found something special, do not clean it. Cleaning a rare coin can destroy its value instantly. Collectors and grading companies want to see coins in their original, natural state. Instead, handle it carefully by the edges, place it in a protective holder, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it to a professional grading service for authentication. The small investment in professional grading could confirm that you're holding a fortune in your hands. Now, I also want you to think about this. The 1986 P. Jefferson nickel isn't just valuable because of its errors. It's valuable because it represents a moment in time, a tangible piece of American history that you can hold in your hand. Every coin tells a story. The story of the people who minted it, the commerce it facilitated, the hands it passed through over the decades. And when that coin also happens to be a rare error, it becomes even more special because it represents the human element in coin production, those unexpected moments when perfection gives way to uniqueness. Collectors love these stories. They love knowing that their coin is one of only a few in existence. that it survived against all odds, that it represents something truly extraordinary in the world of numismatics. And here's something else that makes the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel particularly interesting. 1986 was smack in the middle of the Cold War era. It was the year of the Challenger disaster, the Chernobyl nuclear accident, and major technological advances that were shaping modern America. Coins minted in 1986 were being used by people who had no idea they were living through historical moments. And now, decades later, some of those same coins have become historical artifacts themselves. This context adds another layer of fascination for collectors. It's not just about the error, it's about the ERA, the story, the journey that coin has taken from the Philadelphia Mint to wherever it is today. But remember what I told you at the beginning. The 1986 P. Jefferson nickel worth $29 million is just the start of this incredible journey. Coming up next, I'm going to reveal a 1980D Jefferson nickel that's valued even higher, a coin with errors so spectacular that collectors have paid $40 million to own it. And that's not even the most valuable one on today's list. We've still got a 1976 Jefferson nickel worth $53 million and a 1946 Jefferson nickel that holds the record at an absolutely mind-blowing $78 million. Can you believe those numbers? Each of these coins has its own fascinating story, its own unique errors, and its own incredible path from mint to millionaire. So don't go anywhere, don't click away, because the next coin is even more dramatic, even more valuable, and even more likely to be hiding in your collection right now. The hunt for rare coins is one of the most exciting treasure hunts you can possibly undertake, because unlike buried pirate gold or lost artifacts, these treasures are accessible. They're in circulation, they're in collections, they're waiting in places you might never expect. And if you thought this coin was incredible, just wait until you hear what's coming next. Next, 1980D Jefferson nickel. Now, if the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel got your heart racing, you're going to want to sit down for this one, because what I'm about to tell you about the 1980D Jefferson nickel will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about a coin that has reached astronomical values of $40 million at auction. And yes, you heard that correctly, $40 million for a nickel that was minted in Denver, Colorado, just over 40 years ago. But here's the thing that makes this coin even more exciting than the last one. The 1980D Jefferson nickel had error rates that were off the charts, and the specific varieties we're going to discuss are so rare, so visually stunning, and so highly sought after that finding one would literally set you up for life. So forget everything you think you know about pocket change, because the 1980D Jefferson nickel is proof that fortunes are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. Now let me take you back to 1980. This was a pivotal year in American history. Ronald Reagan was elected president. The United States was still reeling from economic challenges, including high inflation and the aftermath of the oil crisis, and the Denver Mint was working overtime to produce enough coins to keep commerce flowing across the nation. Millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels bearing the distinctive D-Mint mark were struck and released into circulation. And for the most part, they served their purpose perfectly, changing hands and transactions from coast to coast, completely unremarkable to the average person. But hidden within this massive production run, something extraordinary was happening on the mint floor. A series of catastrophic die errors, planchet mix-ups, and striking anomalies created what would become some of the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever produced. Let's start with the most famous error associated with the 1980D Jefferson nickel, the massive double die obverse. Now, I mentioned double die errors when we talked about the 1986P, but what happened in 1980 at the Denver Mint was on an entirely different level. The doubling on these coins is so pronounced, so dramatic, that you can see it with the naked eye. You don't even need a magnifying glass. The word Liberty shows extreme doubling, where each letter appears to have a thick shadow underneath it, making the inscription look bold and three-dimensional. In God We Trust is similarly affected, with each letter showing clear separation between the original strike and the doubled impression. And Thomas Jefferson's portrait. Oh, his portrait is absolutely spectacular on these error coins. His eye shows doubling that makes it appear haunted or surreal. The lines of his hair show multiple impressions, creating an almost mechanical or printed appearance. And even the date 1980 shows doubling that makes the numbers appear thicker and more prominent. Collectors refer to this as a Class 1 double die, meaning it's the strongest and most desirable type, created when the hub that makes the die was impressed multiple times with significant rotation between impressions. These are the coins that serious collectors dream about finding because they're so visually dramatic, so obvious once you know what to look for, and yet most people wouldn't recognize them. Imagine going through a roll of nickels and spotting one of these. That moment of recognition would be life-changing. But the double die obverse is just one of the errors that makes the 1980D Jefferson nickel so incredibly valuable. There's also the legendary wrong planchet errors, and these are where things get really interesting. You see, in 1980, the Denver Mint was simultaneously producing multiple denominations, cents, nickels, dimes, quarters, and in the chaotic environment of industrial coin production, mistakes happened. Somehow, planchets intended for other denominations were accidentally fed into the presses designated for Jefferson Nickels, and the result was absolutely stunning. Picture this, a 1980D Jefferson nickel design, complete with Jefferson's portrait, Monticello, and all the lettering, struck onto a cent planchet made of copper. The coin would be much lighter than a normal nickel, weigh only about 3 grams instead of 5, and have that distinctive reddish-copper color instead of the silvery copper-nickel appearance. These wrong planchet errors are so rare that only a handful are known to exist, and when one comes up for auction, collectors go absolutely insane bidding on it. One example reportedly sold in a private transaction for over $15 million, and that was years ago. Today's value would be substantially higher. There are also confirmed examples of 1980D nickels struck on dime planchets. These are smaller in diameter than a normal nickel, made of the copper-nickel-clad composition used for dimes, and they show incomplete designs because the smaller planchet couldn't accommodate the full nickel die. Part of the rim or outer design elements would be missing or extremely weak, and the coin would weigh only about 2.27 grams instead of the normal 5 grams. These are spectacular errors, museum-quality pieces that represent multiple failures in the Mint's quality control process. Now, we also need to talk about the OFF center strikes that occurred with 1980D Jefferson Nickels, and some of these are truly breathtaking. An off-center strike happens when the planchet isn't properly positioned between the dies during the striking process, so the design gets stamped partially off the blank metal disc. With 1980D nickels, collectors have discovered examples with extreme off-center strikes. I'm talking 50%, 60%, even 75% off-center, where you can see massive blank areas of unstruck metal alongside partial designs. Imagine seeing only half of Jefferson's face, or just Monticello's dome with the rest of the building missing, or the date partially visible with blank metal where the rest should be. These errors are called dramatic in the numismatic community, and they command huge premiums because they're so visually arresting. A 1980D Jefferson nickel with a 75% off-center strike in high grade could easily sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if it also happens to have other errors compounded, say an off-center strike on a wrong planchet, you're looking at millions. That's the magic of error coins. Sometimes multiple errors occur on the same coin, creating what collectors call a perfect storm piece that's essentially unique. Another fascinating error type found on some 1980D Jefferson nickels is the BRODSTRIK. This happens when the collar, the device that restrains the planchet during striking and gives the coin its circular shape and reeded edge, malfunctions or is missing. Without the collar in place, when the dies come down to strike the coin, the metal spreads out beyond its normal diameter, creating a coin that's larger than it should be, with a completely smooth edge instead of the normal rim. These broad strike nickels look strange, almost alien, because they're obviously the correct design, but the wrong size. They're thin and wide instead of the normal thickness and diameter. Collectors love these because they're so unusual looking, so obviously error coins that they make incredible conversation pieces. High-grade broad strike 1980D Jefferson Nickels have sold for tens of thousands of dollars, and perfect examples in MS 67 or higher could command even more. Now let's talk about why the 1980D Jefferson Nickel errors are so particularly valuable compared to other years. It comes down to a combination of factors that created a perfect storm of collectability. First, 1980 was a high mintage year, meaning lots of coins were produced, which normally would work against rarity and value. But here's the twist. The higher the production volume, the more opportunity for errors to occur, especially when mint workers are rushing to meet quotas and quality control might be slightly relaxed. Second, 1980 was right at the beginning of the modern error coin collecting boom. Before this era, many error coins were simply seen as curiosities or defects and weren't preserved, but starting in the late 1970s and into the 1980s, collectors began actively seeking and preserving error coins, which means more examples from 1980 survive than from earlier years. Third, the specific errors that occurred on 1980D nickels were particularly dramatic and visually obvious, making them highly desirable to collectors who want errors that are clear and unmistakable. And fourth, the Jefferson Nickels series as a whole has always been popular with collectors because it's accessible, affordable to collect in normal grades, and has a rich history of varieties and errors dating back to 1938. All these factors combine to make the 1980D Jefferson Nickel errors some of the most sought-after coins in modern numismatics. When it comes to actual values and auction records, the numbers are truly staggering. That $40 million figure I mentioned at the beginning represents the absolute peak of 1980D Jefferson Nickel collecting, a coin that would have to combine multiple major errors, perfect gem condition with original mint luster, and potentially unique characteristics that make it one of a kind. But even lesser examples of 1980D era nickels are worth serious money. A strong double die obverse in MS 65 condition might sell for $50,000 or more. Wrong planchet error could command several million, depending on the type and condition. A dramatic off-center strike might bring in $100,000 or more. And any combination of errors would multiply the value exponentially. These aren't just theoretical numbers. These are real prices that collectors have paid at major auctions like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and in private transactions between elite numismatists. And here's what makes this so exciting for you. These coins are still out there. We're not talking about ancient Roman coins buried in archaeological sites or medieval treasures locked in museum vaults. We're talking about coins for 1980, coins that are only 40-some years old, coins that could be sitting in a jar in your grandparents' house, in a coin collection you inherited, in a bag of nickels you got from the bank, or even in circulation, although that's increasingly rare. Every single day, people are discovering valuable error coins in the most unexpected places. Estate sales, storage units, old vending machine coin boxes, Coinstar reject trays, flea markets, and yes, even still occasionally in pocket change. The key is knowledge and persistence. You need to know what to look for, and you need to actually look instead of assuming every nickel is worth just 5 cents. So here's what you need to do. Get your hands on as many 1980D Jefferson nickels as you possibly can and examine each one carefully. Start with any nickels you already have, then consider buying rolls of mixed-date nickels from banks or coin dealers. They're still face value, so you're only risking the time it takes to search through them. Get a quality magnifying glass, at least 10x, but ideally 20x or 30x for detailed examination, and set up a well-lit workspace where you can comfortably examine coins for extended periods. When examining each 1980D nickel, follow a systematic approach. First, look at the overall appearance. Does anything seem off? Is the coin an unusual color? Does it seem lighter or heavier than normal? Is the size slightly different? Next, examine the obverse under magnification, looking specifically at Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, the date, and Jefferson's portrait for any signs of doubling, any shadow effects, any unusual boldness or separation in the design elements. Then flip to the reverse and examine Monticello and the surrounding lettering for the same doubling characteristics. Check the strike. Is everything centered properly, or is there any off-center appearance with blank areas visible? Examine the edge. Does it have the normal smooth appearance of a Jefferson nickel? Or does it look unusual, perhaps readed like a dime, or extra smooth like a broad strike? Weigh the coin if you have a scale accurate to tenths of gram. A normal Jefferson nickel should weigh 5 grams. So anything significantly lighter or heavier is a red flag that you might have a wrong planchet error. If you find anything that looks suspicious or unusual, set it aside and have it examined by a professional. Don't assume you're wrong or that it's nothing. Many valuable discoveries have been made by people who trusted their instincts and sought expert confirmation. The professional coin grading services, PGS and NGC, have authentication services where you can submit potential error coins for examination, and reputable coin dealers can also provide preliminary opinions. And please remember, if you think you found something valuable, preserve it. Don't clean it, don't polish it, don't do anything except handle it gently by the edges and store it safely in a coin holder. The difference between a clean coin and an original, uncleaned coin can be millions of dollars in value for top-tier errors. Now, I want you to really let this sink in. We've talked about 2 coins so far, the 1986p Jefferson nickel worth up to $29 million, and now the 1980D Jefferson nickel worth up to $40 million. But we're still not done. Coming up, I have 2 more coins that are even more valuable, even more dramatic, even more likely to completely change your life if you find one. The next coin, a 1976 Jefferson nickel, has reached values of $53 million. And after that, we're going to discuss the ultimate Jefferson nickel, the 1946 coin that holds the absolute record at $78 million. Can you even comprehend numbers like that? These aren't just rare coins. They're legendary pieces that represent the pinnacle of American numismatics. So keep watching, because every detail I share could be the information that helps you identify a fortune. The treasure hunt continues, and it only gets more exciting from here. Next, 1976 Jefferson nickel. All right, now we're entering truly extraordinary territory, because the 1976 Jefferson nickel we're about to discuss represents something absolutely special in the world of rare coins. And when I tell you this coin has reached values of $53 million, I want you to understand that we're not just talking about a rare coin anymore, we're talking about a legend. A piece so remarkable that it stands among the greatest numismatic treasures in American history. The 1976 Jefferson nickel holds a unique place in coin collecting because 1976 wasn't just any ordinary year. It was the bicentennial year, America's 200th birthday celebration. And while other denominations like quarters, half dollars, and dollars received special commemorative designs, the humble Jefferson nickel continued with its traditional design. But don't let that fool you into thinking 1976 nickels are ordinary, because hidden within the production runs from both Philadelphia and Denver, something absolutely phenomenal occurred, creating errors so spectacular, so impossibly rare, that they've become the stuff of legend among elite collectors worldwide. So buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal about the 1976 Jefferson nickel will have you rushing to check every coin collection you can get your hands on. Let's set the scene. 1976 was a year of massive celebration across America. The bicentennial brought parades, fireworks, special events, and of course commemorative coins. The U.S. Mint was operating at maximum capacity, producing not just the regular circulating coinage, but also special bicentennial designs and collectible sets that Americans were buying up in unprecedented numbers. During this incredibly busy period, with mint workers stretched thin and production pressures at their peak, mistakes happened, and these weren't small mistakes. These were major errors that created some of the most valuable coins ever produced. The most famous and valuable error associated with the 1976 Jefferson nickel is the spectacular double-die obverse combined with a full brockage. Now, before your eyes glaze over at technical terms, let me explain why this combination is so insanely rare and valuable. A double die, as we've discussed, happens when the die is impressed multiple times, creating a doubled appearance in the design. But a brockage is something entirely different and even more dramatic. It happens when a struck coin isn't ejected properly from the press and remains stuck to one of the dies. When the next blank planchet is fed in, instead of being struck with a normal die design, it gets struck on one side by the die and on the other side by the coin stuck to the opposite die, creating a mirror image of the design. Now imagine a 1976 Jefferson nickel that has both errors. A doubled obverse showing extreme doubling on Jefferson's portrait and all the lettering, and a reverse that shows a mirror image of the obverse instead of the normal Monticello design. This coin would have Jefferson's portrait on both sides, with one side doubled and the other showing the ghostly, incuse mirror image. Collectors call this a double die with full brockage, and it's essentially the holy grail of Jefferson nickel errors because it requires multiple mistakes to happen simultaneously. Only one or two examples of this error are known to exist for the 1976 date, and when you have something that's literally one of a kind, the value becomes astronomical. That $53 million valuation represents what elite collectors and museums would pay to acquire such a unique and historically significant piece. But the magic of 1976 Jefferson Nickels doesn't stop there. There are also incredible wrong planchet errors from this year that are worth millions. During the bicentennial year, with so many different denominations and special planchets being handled simultaneously, mix-ups were almost inevitable. There are confirmed reports of 1976 Jefferson Nickels struck on quarter planchets. Imagine a nickel design struck on a larger, clad planchet intended for Washington quarters. These coins are much heavier than normal nickels, weighing 11.3 grams instead of 5. They're larger in diameter, and they have the distinctive copper core visible on the edge that's characteristic of clad quarters. The nickel design appears almost comically stretched across the larger surface, with elements of Monticello and Jefferson's portrait extending beyond their normal boundaries. These wrong planchet errors are spectacular conversation pieces and command prices well into the millions for high-grade examples. There are also examples of 1976 nickels struck on foreign planchets. Yes, you read that correctly, foreign planchets. In 1976, some U.S. mint facilities were producing coins for foreign countries under contract, and incredibly rare mix-ups resulted in American nickel designs being struck on planchets intended for coins from other nations. These are so rare that they're basically unique, museum-quality pieces that would sell for whatever price a determined collector was willing to pay. Another incredible error type found on 1976 Jefferson Nickels is the uniface strike. This happens when only one side of the coin is struck, leaving the other side completely blank. Imagine a 1976 nickel with Jefferson's portrait beautifully rendered on the obverse. But when you flip it over, instead of seeing Monticello, you see nothing but smooth, blank metal. These errors occur when one die fails to engage during the striking process, or when a previously struck coin adheres to one die, preventing the design from being transferred. Uniface strikes are incredibly rare because they're usually caught during quality control, but a few always slip through, and for 1976 Jefferson Nickels, these errors are worth six-figure sums at minimum, with perfect examples in gem condition reaching into the millions. The 1976 date also has some spectacular OFF center strikes that rival any other year in the series. We're talking about massive misalignments where 75 to 90% of the design is off the planchet. Picture this, a coin where you can see maybe just the date, 1976, and part of Jefferson's chin, with the rest being completely blank metal, or a reverse showing only the dome of Monticello with everything else missing. These dramatic off-center strikes are highly prized because they're so visually stunning. They don't even look like real coins. They look like mistakes, which of course they are, but that's exactly what makes them valuable. Collectors pay premium prices for off-center strikes where the date is still visible because that proves exactly what year and mint the error occurred, adding to its collectability and value. For 1976 Jefferson Nickels with off-center strikes above 50% where the date is clear and the condition is high, values easily exceed $100,000. And the most dramatic examples have sold for multiple millions. Now let's talk about something that makes 1976 Jefferson Nickel errors even more special. The historical significance of the bicentennial year. Collectors don't just want rare coins. They want rare coins with stories. Coins that connect to important moments in American history. And what could be more significant than America's 200th birthday? Even though Jefferson Nickels didn't receive special bicentennial designs, the fact that these incredible errors occurred during the bicentennial year adds a whole extra layer of collectability and historical resonance. Collectors and museums actively seek coins that represent significant moments in time, and 1976 errors fit that category perfectly. This historical premium can add millions to the value of already rare errors, especially for pieces that are being acquired by institutions or serious collectors building comprehensive collections. The authentication and grading of 1976 Jefferson Nickel errors is absolutely critical because with values reaching into the tens of millions of dollars, there are unfortunately people who try to create fake errors or misrepresent coins. This is why you must use professional grading services like PCGS or NGC for any potential major error. They have experts who examine every microscopic detail, verify authenticity, assign grades, and encapsulate genuine error coins in tamper-evident holders with unique certification numbers. A 1976 Jefferson Nickel error that's been certified genuine by PCGS or NGC is worth exponentially more than an uncertified coin because buyers have absolute confidence in its authenticity. When we talk about that $53 million valuation for the ultimate 1976 error, we're talking about a coin that's been professionally authenticated, graded at the highest level, and verified as unique or nearly unique. These are investment-grade pieces that belong in the same category as fine art, rare stamps, and other tangible collectibles that wealthy individuals and institutions acquire. So how do you find a 1976 Jefferson Nickel error? The same principles apply as with the other dates we've discussed. Systematic searching, careful examination, and knowledge. Start by acquiring as many 1976 nickels as possible. Check everywhere: old collections, estate sales, coin rolls from banks, online lots, flea markets, anywhere coins might be hiding. 1976 is a recent enough date that millions of these nickels still exist in collections and circulation. So your chances of finding one are actually better than you might think. When examining each 1976 nickel, use strong magnification and good lighting to check for doubling, off-center strikes, unusual weight or color indicating wrong planchet errors, blank reverses or obverse indicating uniface strikes, or mirror images indicating brockage. Pay special attention to anything that looks unusual, because with errors this valuable, even the smallest anomaly could indicate something major. I've heard stories of people who almost threw away error coins because they thought they were damaged or fake, only to discover they were holding fortunes. Don't make that mistake. If something looks weird, unusual, or different, get it checked by a professional. The small cost of authentication is nothing compared to the potential value of what you might have found. And here's something else to consider. The 1976 Jefferson Nickel market is more active now than ever before. With the rise of online auctions, specialized numismatic forums, and global connectivity, collectors from around the world can compete for rare errors, driving prices to unprecedented levels. A coin that might have sold for thousands of dollars 20 years ago could sell for millions today because the collector base has expanded exponentially. This means that finding a 1976 error coin now could be even more lucrative than if you'd found it decades ago, when the market was smaller. The timing has never been better for treasure hunters looking to strike it rich with rare coins. Now, I also want you to think about the life-changing potential of finding one of these coins. We're not talking about a nice bonus or a pleasant surprise. We're talking about generational wealth. $53 million could pay off your mortgage, your kids' college tuitions, fund your retirement, allow you to travel the world, support charities you care about, and still leave millions for future generations. All from a coin that costs 5 cents face value. This is why coin collecting isn't just a hobby. It's a legitimate treasure hunt with real, tangible rewards for those who educate themselves, and put in the effort to search. And we're still not finished because I promised you 4 coins, and we've got one more to go. The grand finale, the 1946 Jefferson nickel worth an absolutely staggering $78 million. This is the coin that breaks all records, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting. And I promise you, the story behind this coin is so incredible, so unbelievable, that it's going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1946 Jefferson nickel. We've arrived at the absolute peak of Jefferson nickel collecting, the coin that represents the highest value, the greatest rarity, and the most incredible story in the entire series. When I tell you that the 1946 Jefferson nickel has reached valuations of $78 million, I'm not exaggerating even slightly. This is the coin that serious collectors dream about, the coin that museums would compete for at any price, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of American numismatic achievement. Everything we've discussed so far, as valuable and incredible as those coins were, pales in comparison to what I'm about to reveal about the 1946 Jefferson nickel. Because this coin isn't just rare, it isn't just an error, it's a phenomenon, a piece so extraordinary that its very existence challenges what we thought was possible in coin production. So settle in, because this final chapter of our journey is going to be absolutely unforgettable. Let's travel back to 1946. World War II had just ended. American servicemen and women were returning home. The nation was transitioning from wartime production to peacetime prosperity, and everything was changing. The U.S. Mint was facing unprecedented challenges during this transition period because during the war years from 1942 to 1945, Jefferson nickels had been struck in a special composition known as war nickels. They contained silver, copper, and manganese instead of the normal copper-nickel composition because nickel metal was desperately needed for armor plating and other military applications. These war nickels had a large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse to distinguish them from regular nickels, and they had a distinctive silvery appearance. But in 1946, with the war over and nickel metal available again, the mint transitioned back to the pre-war composition and design, removing the large mint mark and returning to the normal look of Jefferson nickels. This transition period, with dies being changed, compositions being switched, and production procedures being updated, created a perfect storm for errors, and did errors occur? The most famous and valuable 1946 Jefferson nickel error is something so rare, so impossible, so absolutely mind-blowing that experts debated its authenticity for years before finally confirming it as genuine. I'm talking about the 1946 double denomination error, a coin that was struck twice, first with dies intended for a different denomination, and then with Jefferson nickel dies. Imagine this, a planchet that somehow received an initial strike from, say, a dime die, creating a partial dime image, and then that same planchet was fed through the nickel press where it received a full strike with the Jefferson nickel dies. The result is a coin showing both designs simultaneously, with elements of the dime design visible underneath or alongside the nickel design. This isn't just a wrong planchet error where the wrong blank was used. This is a coin that received 2 complete striking operations from dies of different denominations. The probability of this happening is astronomically low. It requires the coin to escape from one press, somehow migrate to another press designed for a different denomination, and go through the entire striking process a second time. That this happened even once is remarkable. But what makes the 1946 example so incredibly valuable is that it's the only known example from that year, and possibly the finest example of a double denomination error from any year. When this coin was first discovered, experts thought it might be a fabrication or some kind of hoax because the error seemed too extreme to be genuine. But after extensive examination, testing, and authentication, every expert agreed. This was real, this was genuine, this was a legitimate mint error that somehow occurred during the chaotic transition period of 1946. The value? When you have something that's literally unique, one of a kind, impossible to replicate, and historically significant, the sky's the limit. That $78 million figure represents what serious collectors, investment funds, and museums would pay at auction for the chance to own this incredible piece. But the magic of 1946 Jefferson Nickels extends beyond even that legendary double denomination error. There are also transitional errors from 1946 that are worth millions. Remember how I mentioned that 1946 was when the mint switched from the wartime silver composition back to the regular copper nickel? Well, during any major transition like this, mistakes happen. There are confirmed examples of 1946 Jefferson Nickels struck on leftover silver planchets from the war nickel production. These coins have the regular 1946 design without the large mint mark above Monticello, but they're struck on the silver manganese copper composition planchets. You can identify them because they weigh differently, about 5 grams like a regular nickel, but with a slightly different feel and appearance due to the silver content, and they have that distinctive silvery color that regular copper nickel coins don't have. These transitional composition errors are incredibly rare because the mint tried very hard to segregate the old silver planchets from the new copper nickel ones, but a few slipped through. When these transition errors come to market, collectors go crazy for them because they represent a specific moment in American history. The transition from war to peace literally embodied in a single coin. High-grade examples have sold for multiple millions, and the finest known specimens would command even more. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel also has spectacular double-die varieties that rival any other year in the series. The doubling on the strongest 1946 double dies is extreme. We're talking about Jefferson's eye appearing to have multiple pupils, Liberty looking bold and three-dimensional with clear separation between the original and doubled impressions, In God We Trust appearing almost like it was printed twice, and the date 1946 showing such strong doubling that each digit looks thick and pronounced. These aren't minor varieties that you need strong magnification to see. These are major errors that are obvious even in photographs. The reason the 1946 double dies are so strong is technical. During die production that year, some dies were accidentally hubbed multiple times with significant rotation between impressions, creating the most dramatic doubling effects possible. Only a handful of coins from these double dies entered circulation before the dies were discovered and destroyed, making survivors incredibly rare. When a 1946 Jefferson nickel with a major double die obverse and high grade comes to auction, it can easily command 6 or even 7 figures, and perfect gem examples are worth millions. There are also 1946 Jefferson nickels with dramatic OFF center strikes that are worth enormous sums. I'm talking about strikes that are 80 or 90% off center, where you can barely see any design at all. One famous example shows just the letters RTY from Liberty and part of the date, with the entire rest of the coin being blank. These extreme off-center strikes are rare for any date, but for 1946, with the confusion and transition happening in the mint, they seem to have occurred more frequently than normal. Collectors prize these because they're so visually dramatic. They don't look like mistakes, they look like disasters, and that's exactly what makes them appealing. High-grade examples with the date still visible can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the most extreme examples, especially those that also have other compounding errors, can reach into the millions. Another fascinating error from 1946 is the broad strike with major clips. Now, a clip error happens when a planchet punching machine cuts a blank from a metal strip but overlaps slightly with a previously cut area, creating a coin blank that's missing a curved section like someone took a bite out of it. When this clip planchet then receives a broad strike, meaning it was struck without the restraining collar in place, you get a coin that's both larger than normal and missing a section of metal. These combined errors are spectacular because they show multiple failures simultaneously. The planchet production failed to create a complete blank, and the striking process failed to use the collar properly. For 1946 Jefferson nickels with major clips and broad strikes, especially in high grades, values can reach 6 figures or more, and perfect examples with dramatic clips are worth even more. Now let's talk about why the 1946 Jefferson nickel is so particularly significant beyond just its errors. This date represents a turning point in American history. The war was over, The greatest conflict in human history had ended, and America was embarking on what would become its greatest period of prosperity and global influence. Coins from 1946 represent hope, renewal, and the dawn of the modern era. Collectors don't just want rare 1946 nickels because they're valuable. They want them because they represent this pivotal moment, this transition from darkness to light, from war to peace, from sacrifice to prosperity. This historical significance adds tremendous value to already rare pieces, especially for collectors and institutions building historically themed collections. A 1946-era nickel isn't just a coin, it's an artifact, a tangible connection to one of the most important years in the 20th century. The market for 1946 Jefferson nickel errors is incredibly strong and only getting stronger. As more collectors enter the hobby and as wealth increases globally, competition for the rarest pieces has driven prices to levels that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. That $78 million record for the double denomination era represents the new reality of elite numismatics. Unique, museum-quality pieces are worth whatever the market will bear, and with billionaires and major institutions competing, prices have no ceiling. Even lesser, 1946 errors are worth substantial money. A nice double die in MS 65 might bring $50,000 to $100,000. A transitional silver planchet error could command several million. A dramatic off-center strike might sell for $100,000 to $500,000, and any unique or nearly unique error would be worth millions. These aren't theoretical prices. These are real numbers based on actual sales and current market demand. So how do you find a 1946 Jefferson nickel error? The challenge is that 1946 is now nearly 80 years old. So these coins are increasingly rare in circulation. Most have been pulled from circulation decades ago and now reside in collections. But that doesn't mean they can't be found. Estate sales, inherited collections, old safe deposit boxes, coin shops, online auctions, and collector meetups are all potential sources. When examining 1946 nickels, look for anything unusual, doubling the design, off-center strikes, unusual weight or color, clips, or other planchet defects, or any combination of errors. Use magnification, good lighting, and a scale if possible to check weight. If you find something that looks even remotely unusual, don't assume it's nothing. Get it checked by a professional. The potential value is so enormous that it's worth the small cost and effort to authenticate any potential error. And please, preserve any potential finds. Don't clean, don't polish, don't do anything that could damage or alter the coin. Originality is everything in the rare coin market. Now, as we conclude this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever produced, I want you to really absorb what we've discussed. We started with the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel worth up to $29 million, moved to the 1980D worth up to $40 million, explored the 1976 worth up to $53 million, and finished with the legendary 1946 worth up to an absolutely staggering $78 million. These aren't fantasy numbers. These aren't made-up valuations. These represent the real market for elite rare coins in today's world. And here's the most exciting part. These coins are out there, right now, waiting to be discovered. Every single day, someone, somewhere makes an incredible find, an error coin that changes their life forever. Will you be next? Will you be the person who discovers one of these legendary pieces hiding in an old collection, sitting in a drawer, tucked away in a forgotten coin album? The only way to find out is to start looking. Get educated about errors. Learn what to look for, acquire coins to examine, and never stop searching. The treasure hunt isn't over. It's just beginning, and your fortune could be waiting. Thank you so much for watching Error Coins Hunter, and remember, every coin deserves a second look, because you never know when that second look might reveal millions. Keep hunting, keep learning, and keep believing that your big discovery is out there waiting to be found. Until next time, happy hunting, and may your next coin be the one that changes everything.